Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is going to be a special video that I'm posting live, just because I thought if sometimes when your thoughts are just right on the surface and you just need to say it, it's better just to do it right then than to wait and let that pass. So I decided that I wanted to talk about awareness and also awareness in our children and how we can break those patterns. The first thing is that whenever you, in your moment, in your daily life, you see yourself having patterns of, acting on bad behavior, translating that behavior in your home, around your children, in your car with your children, anything like that, it reflects on them. Kids do adapt to change, but one thing that hurts their hearts more than anything is seeing their parents go through pain. And then the parents denying that they're going through anything. And one thing that I know is that when you deny yourself of your own awareness, and then you come back and you tell your kids that, oh, I'm fine, everything's good, it just puts them in the same state of mind. So the way you're behaving is the way they're going to behave. So they're not going to open up. So it's good to open up to your kids. It's healthy to open up to your kids. When you do, that puts them in a greater state of thinking, oh, well, mom's opening up to me, dad's opening up to me. So it's, I can open up if something's going wrong. And you should always be able to talk to your kids. And I just think that we as a society, we are still, I'm sorry about that. Okay, sorry. This thing is not working as great as I want it to. We as a society still think that, our kids are fine. They're playing, they're hanging out with their friends, they're on, TikTok, and they're doing this whole social media stuff, and they're active in sports, and everything's fine, but have you, when they get home from school, have you asked them, hey, how was your day? And was their reaction, oh, it was fine, it was okay? Well, where they get that from? They get that from you guys. We as parents, we have instilled that into their mind of how to respond, because we respond that way. What if someone calls us on the phone and asks us how we're doing, and we say, oh, we're good, we're fine, but we're really not? We're setting those, I guess you could say, we're the platform of mental health is still being hidden. We as parents don't want to admit to our own children, even at a young age, if they're young, under the age of 10 or even under the age of 15, whatever, that we have some problems and we're not having a good day. You don't have to necessarily go into details with your children, and you want to be very selective of what you say at what age to be proper parent. But man, you need to tell your kids that you're not doing well. That will lead to the open communication that you are responsible. That's your job as a parent, being responsible for having that line of open communication communication for both of you. And I just know that I've always told my kids that I was fine. And I did that for so many years. So I'm very, very guilty of it. Very guilty of it. Because I didn't want them to feel bad for me. But years later, when I figured out that they actually were feeling what I was feeling, because my body language was saying, Mom's hurting. Mom's not having a good day. She's struggling. That's when they were too scared almost to speak up and say, hey, Mom, what can I do for you? Or, do you want to talk? And I just remember my youngest, he was one of the ones that really shut off as he got older. And it took a lot to get just information out of him, And I said, Cooper, we need to change this whole, dynamic. I need to be a better influence on having an open line of communication. And you're old enough now, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna share this with you. And I finally got to the point where I was expressing to my children that, hey, I'm not having a good day. I'm really struggling. And I want you to be aware of that. I am struggling and I may need to talk to somebody. I may need some help. And so with that being said, I want to get into a little bit about how that can affect you and how it can affect your children and even your community. And the topic I want to talk about really is just the overall awareness, but yet communicating that awareness to the people around you. That's really important to do. Because if you don't communicate that to the people around you in your house, the people in your life, okay, however that looks, if you're not willing to communicate that, your kids are going to notice it and they're going to repeat the same type of closure. And you don't want that. And I think that that's where a lot of mental illness can step in, because I know that there was lots of times that I was too scared to say anything to my parents. And because I was afraid of their reaction. And there was always those times where I would be ready to talk and they wouldn't be. Or I would ask my mom, do you need someone to talk to? I'll talk to you, Even as a young child, I wanted her attention. So I did anything to get her to talk to me and she wouldn't. And it made me feel very shunned, like I wasn't smart enough, that I couldn't handle the type of talk she wanted to talk about. But looking back, I feel like if she would have opened up those lines of communication when I was a child, I probably could have opened up more lines of communication back to her and not had a fear of telling her how I really feel. Because when we tell our parents, hey, we're feeling like this, and if it goes the way that it did in my childhood, it was like, oh, you'll be okay, or they'll give you a hug or whatever, and they'll kind of send you on your way, and they won't take the time to listen and to actually take a moment to make sure that you're okay and that when the conversation ends, you're going to be okay. If I would have had that kind of support, I could have prevented so much bad behavior in myself growing up and in my adolescent years, and then in my young 20s, and then, later in life. I would have been a lot braver if I had parents that did that. So what I'm doing today is I'm encouraging everyone. If you're a parent and you're struggling with mental illness, tell your children. They are going to love you because you're their parents. Tell your kids, I'm struggling. I'm looking into getting help, or I'm already getting help. I'm going to learn how to take these steps. They may want to join you. They may want to take it with you. They may want to interact that, help you. Kids are really good about helping. I just remember, there was several different things that I would do that would help me kind of just get through whatever situation I was going. And I'd always get in the kitchen and I would start cooking. And that's one of my therapies, I guess you can say, that I really can get into the kitchen. I can cook and I can create. And that's my creative side. And if I tap into that, then that's where I feel my best, is when I do that. And I just know that, when you do that, you're showing your kids that communication is the way. I mean, it's our first go-to for, on this journey. We have to communicate. We have to speak up. We have to say we want help. We have to tell our kids what we're going through. Because they know. They just do. They're smarter than you think. And even at a very young age, they're very, very intelligent. They pick up on your body language. So if you're coming in and your eyes are puffy because you've been crying in the car before you picked them up from school, whatever the case may be, your kids know that something is different. And if you don't explain what that difference is, you're keeping them in the dark, which puts the same type of pattern of communication on them. So you are influencing them to be closed off. So by the time they get up to becoming a teenager, it's 10 times harder to get them to talk to you when you know that their body language is different and there's something wrong and they're not telling you, and they're just tied to their phone and they just go, lock themselves in their room basically all night. And you go check on them and they're like, oh, I'm okay. But we as parents, we need to set some boundaries and we need to set some rules in place with all of this. Having an open house where you have communication and sit down meetings with your kids and family dinners where you're not on your telephones and you put all the cell phones away and you actually sit down and have conversations with your kids. This is all part of the healing process, because what you went through young and the effects of it now that you're going through in your life, like I am, it puts a toll on your children. And what you don't want is your children to experience anything like isolation, being quiet, or having to feel like they have to be quiet, not having a voice, just keeping it all in. Because what's going to happen is that there's bad, destructive, and evil behavior that can come out. And I want to give you an example. I want to talk a little bit about Uvalde, Texas, and what happened last year. And last year was when that happened on May 24th, my mother had died like 2 days later. So I really didn't get I heard about it, but being from Texas, I was like, what? This is happening in Texas? And it just kind of alarmed me. But then I got the news that my mom had passed. So that was like at the same time. where I couldn't think about both. I had to just concentrate on, funeral and having to say goodbye and all that. And that emotion alone was just tremendously hard. And so I know that for me, it was one of those where I needed to be in a place in my life where I could actually hear exactly what happened and and the dogs are barking. Actually hear what's happening, and that what are they going to do for those people. So I did some research on it, and grief is a big part of it. With most mental illness that you go through, whatever stage that you're at, because there's different stages, the trauma, it could be a big trauma like a death of a parent or a death of a child, with a capital T, is what Dr. Fuller would say, or it could be a little trauma with a little t. Whichever trauma that you're mainly focused on and that's at the tip of your brain that you can't seem to, get past, whether it's grief or, a little bitty circumstance, the thing is that you have to go through the steps with both incidents. You can't take one greater than the other. They both have to be treated with care, just overall care. You've got to care for yourself. You got to tell people around you. You have to communicate. So now that I am in a place where I've been working on my grief with my parents dying, and just so we're clear, you guys, I had 3 parents die within a year and a half. So it was my real dad, my mom, and then my stepdad, who had been in my life since I was 18. So it was a very traumatic, this has been the last 2 years have been very, very hard, very hard. And so with saying that, I know that when I heard about Uvalde, Texas, I thought, wait a minute, I've heard of that little town before. Well, come to find out, I remembered where I heard it from. Matthew McConaughey, one of my favorite actors in Hollywood. Of course, he's a Texan, but he's from there. And then I started looking it up and doing some research on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this 18-year-old dropout high school student had everything screaming at his family saying, I need help. But of course, he wouldn't verbalize that he needed help. He had people warning, him that, what you're doing is not good. You need to talk to somebody. He wouldn't listen. Okay. His mental health went to the evil side. He was very unstable. As I was doing my research on him, I thought, if only his mom or his grandmother at an early age would have caught the fact that he was bullied in 4th grade or 5th grade, from what they know from other students that went to school with him, if they would have caught that and tried to put him in therapy, then it could have prevented a mass destructive shooting at an elementary school where, 19 children died and 2 teachers died. And the result of that, her husband dies. I mean, just the amount of people that died in a town that's just, probably, I want to say 4 hours from me. It's just overwhelming. I had no idea of the destruction and what actually happened. And this kid just turned 18. He went in, he bought firearm that should have alarmed the people that were distributing, firearms, the people that sold firearm. Why would an 18-year-old come in and buy machete type AK-15s? Why would a young person do that if he didn't have a plan in motion? Because it was cool and he wanted a prop? No, because he also bought bullets, like 1,500 bullets the next day. He did it at different stages because he thought he was, but he warned people. He told people what his plan was. And nobody reported it. They just called him an idiot. They just called him stupid. They just called him a faggot. They called him all kinds of bad names on social media. But his nickname was the school shooter. I mean, if that doesn't scream out, I need help, get me some help before I ruin my entire life, I don't know where does it fall? It falls back to the parents. Whether you're a guardian of that child or you're a parent of that child, it doesn't matter. You're involved in that child's life and you need to get that child help because by that time it's too late. And the guilt that mother probably is feeling right now and that grandmother is feeling, even though she got shot in the face and she can't talk and she's a survivor of his actions, there's still that guilt that they could have done something else. I saw a tweet on Twitter where his dad said, if he would have just shot me instead of doing all that, it would have been okay. So his own father saying, I would have took the bullet for the pain that I caused you if you would have just told me you needed help. So as I was researching and getting all this, I was just thinking about, not just my own children, but I was thinking about, our kids, if you've had kids past Columbine, which was 1999, your children in their schools have been raised with a drill of a shooter coming into the school and shooting up the school, whether it's one or two or a whole gang of them. They have learned a drill since, I guess they put it in action in early 2000. Okay. I don't know when exactly. I'm not going to quote it. But I just know that after Columbine, that's when they did it. Now, Columbine I remember it because I was a young mom. And I just remember how devastating to be at one of the safest places as a child. You are supposed to feel secure and safe, just like at home. And the fact that you can't feel safe and secure at school, how is a parent supposed to be able to drop you off? I mean, there's so many emotions with that. And so it was really good to hear that the kids and the community and the nation got together and pushed their congressmen to start pushing the laws and really, really taking a big hit and telling our government, our legislator, the people in the House of Congress, hey, you need to wake up and change these gun laws and change them, not take away our Second Amendment right. We're not taking away guns, but we're changing the laws to own a gun. When you have mental illness, that should be registered in your record on your driver's license that you suffer from mental illness and you are not allowed to own a firearm. At least a firearm not like that. I mean, that is like military trained, weapon of mass destruction, killing in war. I mean, how could that not have been noticed? There's so many different things when you research that whole story about what had happened in that case. It just boggles my mind of the lack. And then, of course, the cowardness that happened, leaving that shooter in there. The fact that they didn't even have a police officer on campus when he first arrived. And I watched the actual video footage of the 77 minutes. And it just blew my mind of the lack of communication between each department once they got there. But he had already done over 100 rounds. He just walked straight into that school, jumped the fence, crashed his truck, jumped the fence, was shooting up the school, kind of giving them a warning, I'm here. We had one teacher call 911. People, and you can't get a cop over there? Where is the student police officer, which we call resource police? Wasn't there. Lack of officers, whatever the case may be, because what? It's an elementary, you think it's not going to get shoot up? Give me a fucking break, is what I say. We can't go anywhere now. Like, we're in that state of this country. America has a gun shooting in a school. It is a problem now. We are surpassed it. I believe that we're surpassed it at Columbine in 1999. I know it affected my community when it was here at, I don't know, I think it was one of these little Baptist churches in Fort Worth a while, like 20 years ago. It happened at a church. So it happens at your church. Then it happened at a Walmart. Then it happened, at, a big concert in Vegas. It's happened not just in schools. It's happened in big places where there's a lot of people. But when it comes down to kids, going in and not holding them hostage, but just shooting right when you get in there. That's exactly what he did. And it was very hard to watch the footage, but it was very educational. And I do recommend that you watch the footage as a parent and then start talking to your kids. Because if you haven't, like me, who had other things going on in that time last year, I would have immediately, if my mom hadn't died and I hadn't been in my head with that emotion, I would have immediately talked to my children and asked them, of course they were grown, but it was just one of those, where it wasn't until I got on, well, with my youngest son, I didn't see an officer, never saw an officer that was officed in the school called the resource, police officer. So it's the school district has a police force and each campus has a police officer, one or two, securing that school. So whenever Cooper had started middle school, we went to a brand new campus that just got built and they had that officer there. And I thought, this is great. They should do this to all the schools, but they didn't. They don't do them to these little towns that are on low budgets, that their congressmen aren't fighting for change. And, whenever these small towns don't have the budget, they can't place. And you have to understand, if you see This school, Robb Elementary, it looked about 30 years old, looked like it hadn't been touched or redone much. So they didn't even have a budget to fix it. But that's where we as a nation have to stay on top of, because everybody in the House of Congress, they're not doing a damn thing about it. It keeps happening. And I saw one clip today where Barack Obama, our former president, he said that there was like every single week he was hearing something happen in 2022. So that was like a year of where a lot of these angry young adults came out, and then they reenact a lot of the school shootings in like TV series and, movie series and things like that. So it is it is a worldwide problem, but it is an American problem for America. Because when it happened all those years ago in London, they changed the laws and it hasn't happened since. So we kind of need to take a little bit of backseat and look at what, the UK's doing, because they got it right on the first one. So why have we been hit for almost 25 years? We've been hit. It seems like every year there's something. It's either a school shooting or a shooting. I mean, it's just devastating that the numbers. When I heard one of the Congress women speak on behalf of these families and how she wants to change, and she said that it's 90% of Americans want the laws in place. We're not talking about taking guns away from Americans. We're talking about making sure firearms are in the hands of responsible Americans. So changing the gun laws to raising the age to 21. And then also, making it to where if they have mental illness of any kind, and they are being treated, that they should not be, and especially if they're, in a suicidal state of mind and they are mentally ill, they've surpassed certain stages, they definitely should not be having a firearm or a firearm around them, due to the fact that they could kill themselves or they could harm somebody else. And I know that there's more than one way to kill people, but we're just talking about this particular evilness that you can pass down to a child if you're showing signs of bad behavior or neglecting your kids or not talking to them. And if all you're doing is fighting with your children, something has to change. You must get into therapy. You must get into a program. You must get into free group therapy. Go to church and get into therapy. Do something before another big accident like this. I mean, this is just a tragedy. It's horrendous just to think about all those kids, but one of them was 9 and the rest were 10 years old. 10. And I just remember when my kids were little and they all turned 10 at all the different stages, how they would just be like, "Oh, Mom, look, I'm double hands. I'm a full double hands now." Because when they were little, they'd be like, "I'm 5, I'm 4, I'm 3." But now they'd be like, "Oh, look, we're double hands." And I could picture my kids doing this on their birthday or whenever they were 10, telling somebody they're 10. So they hold up both hands, excited. And I just think of all those children that lost their lives. And just yesterday, there was a shooting at Lamar High School. And it was in front of the school, wasn't in the school. The shooter shot somebody in front of the school and then grazed another child. That little girl's in the hospital. I don't know the outcome of it yet, because I haven't seen the reports yet. But, this is my hometown. And it's just like, that affects us in our community. And I have a family member who is in high school here in this town, a different high school. And I know that they had to wait in line this morning because they were bag checking all the kids. And what we've noticed in the psychology of mental illness over the last 25 years is that the shooter, 9 times out of 10, was a kid that was bullied, a kid that's isolated, a kid that's angry, and it's a young adult. It's either a teenager or a young adult that's doing these shootings. So it falls back to us as parents. We have to be the nation that changes, that makes real change. We've already shown this nation in the last 100 years how quickly we can make change. So why are we hanging on to our, the reins, I guess, like not letting go of your power? I mean, give me a fucking break. If 90% of Americans, 95%, it's a very high number. If all Americans said, this needs to change and Congress needs to do something about it, then they need to get off of their ass and do something about it and change the laws. It doesn't matter what president is in office, he still has to have majority come together and vote to get the laws changed in our country. That's how it works. So I am one that I just have one voice. I'm just one human being. But this is our whole human race. And if we're harming and hurting each other, it goes back to something isn't right. I need help. Something in our brain isn't right. I need help. And, if this particular thing happened back when I was 10 years old, my parents would have said something on the lines of, oh, he's a devil worshiper. He just needs, Jesus. Well, yeah, he needs Jesus for sure. He needs to get a revelation of, what God and, the universe is about. I get that. But he also needs professional help, and he needs emotional support and love and affection from the parents. And if you're not giving your child emotional support, that could be your kid one day. So let's start it now. Let's start it now with our young children. Let's start it at their toddler, their little mind from the birth up until like 3.5. That's like when their mind is like, has the most brain cells working. And we have to get those little babies developed and on track with what's right and what's wrong. But we also have to be the best influence we can be to our kids. The very best. If anything else you get out of this message today, it's try to be the very best to your kids. And the way you do that is you open the lines of communication. Because when it does hit home, it doesn't matter if you have a child in school or your children are already grown and gone. It still affects your community. It affects your nation. It affects your heart for humanity. So when I was doing some research, and sorry guys, I didn't mean to shake the video up. But when I was doing some research and I saw that they were taking steps, they got some funding. And for the next 5 years, they do have a mental health resource that they put in motion immediately for the families and all of the victims that survived. They put that in motion for 5 years. So they have free, to them, it doesn't cost them anything. It's our, I don't know how they did it. They just got the money and they put it in the town, which is good because it shouldn't take, but my point to that, and I'll tell you why, my point to that is it shouldn't take a massive destructive shooting where 19 babies get killed for them to put a free healthcare resource for wellness and mental health, behavioral health in the town. It shouldn't come to that. We should already have those in place. So those are something that I personally want the laws to change. I want it to be where everybody has access to free programs, free behavioral and mental health programs. I think our whole nation should be set up that way because it all starts with the mind. Our behavior patterns start with our mind. Our decisions start with the mind. We make a choice. We have free will, but it starts with what are our thoughts? Are we acting on our thoughts? If we are they evil? Do we want to go out and do a mass shooting? Talk to your children, talk to your kids, make sure that they're okay. And if they need someone to talk to, let it be you first. You be there for your children because they could be gone like that. Do you think all those parents that day, when they dropped their babies off and they went to their little graduation ceremony, half of them wanted to go home with their parents after the graduation ceremony. And a few of them did. But then the moms were like, oh, you should stay in school. It's just a couple more days, and then you get out for the summer. And that's all kids think about. They just want to get out for the summer and play with their friends and go swimming and go to the lake and do all the summer fun things. They're just ready to get out of school. So that's what's on their mind after they get back from recess and in their class. They don't think that a gunman's going to walk in and take their lives away. But it could be our family next. It could be your family next. It could be your children's school next. There's so much that has to be done. But it all goes back. This is where you have to think. It's the tragedy happens. And those tragedy happens in our world every day. We just may not hear about it. But when they do happen, it seems like that's the only time we come together as a nation and get some shit done. And it's frustrating. It's super frustrating to know that that's how we're built, that we are a lazy country. I mean, I love this country, but when is it going to stop? I mean, and I don't even know the full details about Lamar High School, but man, it shook me yesterday. It shook me bad because my family member is in a different high school, and my heart just dropped. I couldn't function. It was that close. I just know at this time in my life, now that I'm on this new path and this new journey, that Uvalde, Texas, I know that I would like to go down there and I would like to see the memorial site and I would like to see everything that's going on. I would like to see the murals that they painted of each child on the town walls. They're just beautiful. If you want to go see those, you guys, I recommend you take a road trip and go see them live in person if you're in Texas. If you're not, then you can look at them online or fly down there. But these families, the fact that it took a tragedy to step up to get mental health into their community, that's one of many problems that this community had. The other problem was the cowardness in all the departments that showed up. Like, why do you take 57 minutes, to rush in on an 18-year-old kid when it should have been done outside of the school? There should have been a police officer there, and it would have prevented it all. Because as soon as they saw him wreck his truck, they should have sent the alarm out. And that police officer that is supposed to be on campus, that's a legislative rule, and they had just did a training exercise 5 months before. So the department that is run by the school district department for that town, that county, that school district just did a training exercise with his officers 5 months before that tragedy happened, and it could have been prevented. It would have been prevented if they would have had an officer in place, been armed. I've even heard of where they're training teachers to be armed for things like this, which is, I understand it should probably be up to the teacher, but that's not a bad idea. But for every door, okay, so we had issues with the doors. They were supposed to be locked. We need to change that. I mean, we have to do it where we're so secured, and we're so like, and so they've even raised like the fence, so for schools now, we need to raise the size of a fence, because when you're a campus, you just have like a little 4-foot, chain link fence, usually it's not, because you're on a budget when you're a school district. They need to take it out of those politicians' pockets, and they need to quit worrying about their big salary and about the dog park and put the money towards the freaking fence that protects our children and grandchildren. Because I can't even imagine at this point my grandchildren going to school, a public school or a private school. It doesn't matter, because they've both been hit in the last 25 years. It doesn't matter what type of school it is. See, evilness doesn't, it comes in all forms, and it hits in all forms. But it all goes back to the mind. Do we want our kids to have this? And if they're playing those, here's the thing with those video games. This is just my opinion, okay? I'm just one person, okay? Just my opinion. I am so glad that my kids actually listened to me when I told them that those combat warrior, whatever video games were really, really graphic and terrible. And that gets into your mind, and you don't need to be doing those games. And I won't put up with it, because I didn't want them to end up liking guns like it was a fab. Like, girls carrying a purse, they're just, carrying a gun. And so if they get emotional at their boyfriend, they're going to shoot their boyfriend. In my mind, I think like that. So all these video games, I definitely didn't want them to be all about, getting into guns. And so I just know that as parents, to monitor social media, and we need to monitor their use of, sorry, I'm letting my dogs in, their use of guns on these videos, on these Mortal Kombat and all that shit, that they're on. It's too much, and that's how we get those radical, groups that want to go out and do massive killings, you know? And you know, some of the signs that this kid was doing that wasn't reported, which it should have been reported to CPS, and I'll tell you why. This is the truth, and you guys will agree with me. It should have been reported to CPS. The minute he started mutilating cats and other animals, rabbits, you know, all these other animals, he was mutilating them. That's a sign of a serious mental illness, psychopathic behavior. I mean, what? Okay, so the innocence of a cat, think of a cat and how innocent a cat is. No defense, just like an innocent child. So if you see somebody in your neighborhood mutilating animals as innocent as a cat, I mean, get the fuck out of here. I don't get it. Why wouldn't you report that to CPS? That child is unstable and something's wrong. Something's going on in his environment. Whether it started with the mother, the grandmother, I don't care. The fact is that kid needed help. And we could have prevented it if somebody would have reported it, but we can't go back in time. We can't change it. And that's what makes you angry. Believe me, that definitely makes you angry. But getting through all that, I wanted to say how important it is to talk to your kids so they don't ever get to that level of shutting off communication. Tell them that you're hurting. Tell them that you're struggling. Tell them you're having a bad day. Open that line of communication so they'll learn the good patterns of keeping their lines open with you. And that's what I'm getting to. And I just wanted to use the example, you know. So I plan on going down there on the anniversary date of the 24th of May. And I'm going to do a podcast special when I get down there. And it's going to be something that is going to be close to my heart because, you know, they have the GoFundMe pages. They have all of the resources are coming in, which I'm very, very thankful that our state of Texas stepped up. But I'm also very disappointed in my state right now, knowing that those officers, I mean, they need to be held accountable. I'm sorry. Back the blue. Yes, we back the blue. Okay. Yes, of course, we want good police. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty and it's time to take out somebody so they don't take out our children, you fucking break the door down. You get into the sheetrock. You get into the roof. You do whatever. You don't wait on snipers to get there. You don't wait on Border Patrol to get there. You fucking do it yourself. And that's all I got to say. Because there was a mama that ran in there while the gunman was still in there. She pulled out her 2 kids out of the cafeteria and she got past all those fucking cops. And there was dads out there that were trying to, like, you know, be like, dude, that's my kid in there. And all these cops are just standing out there. There's no sense of accountability. Nobody took ownership of that whole situation. And it should have taken place outside of the school. The minute he crashed his truck right in that embankment or ditch, whatever you want to call it, right by the school, that little quiet town would have heard what was happening. And they would have saw that he got out of that vehicle with an AK-15 and was ready to do some massive shooting, was dressed in black and everything. He looked like Mortal Kombat guy. And watching this live video should shake you to the core. I do recommend, as a parent or a grandparent or even just a human, Watch this video. Go on CNN, go on YouTube, type in Uvalde, Texas, live 77-minute coverage, and it will pop up. Now, I will warn you, you will hear the shooting and you'll hear the police talk, but they did edit out all the kids' screams and cries and wails and all the teachers. And I'm very thankful that they edited that out for the respect of the families, because I couldn't imagine being on the other side, watching on TV of some sort of device, hearing my child scream. Because see, a mother knows her own child scream. I just do. Because I gave birth to those children. So I'm glad they edited that out. But I do recommend everybody watch this. I'm going to tell everybody. Go watch this. Open up those lines of communication. It's important. It's so, so, so important. We don't ever want or ever think that our kids could be affected by something like that, or that they could be on the other side and do something like that, because our bad influences wrecked their lives. We fucked them up so bad and didn't do nothing about it, and that's how they got out their anger. I wouldn't want my child to hurt anybody because of my foolishness of neglecting their lines of communication with me. And so, everybody wants to put a finger on someone to blame, which there's several people in this situation to blame, but it goes back to his guardian and parents. They should have started noticing his behavioral patterns at a young age and put him in therapy to help him, and then put him in a social group of some kind where he wouldn't turn out to be an isolated person. Because the great thing about, resources is that we have things like, the YMCA. We have things like Big Brothers if they don't have a dad. We have things like, church youth. We have a lot of things, a lot of community, a lot of kid activities are with church, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not a religious person, so what? Maybe your kid wants to be. Maybe your kid wants to learn about God. Let them. They have their own minds, their own creativity at such a young age. Let them get involved with kids, good kids. Put them in sports. You prevent a lot of these things when your children are young. And, honestly, if my parents, if they gave me the emotional support and put me in therapy young, I would have been a completely different person. I know that. But now I'm having to take the steps at a much later age to make sure that this awareness gets out. I'm just one person. I'm Sunshine Andy. This is the real talk. And I'm going to post all the information on my page so y'all can donate and watch the video. I'm not going to post the video to watch, but I do encourage everyone to watch the 77-minute video of Uvalde. And it's Robb Elementary, ROBB Elementary, Uvalde, Texas, and shooting. And it'll pull up on YouTube. The YouTube's got the one. CNN's got a better one, I think, better quality. But anyways, either one, you can find it on YouTube. And thank you for letting me share. And I will talk to you guys real soon. I know I vented a lot, but I know that the talk was worth it, because if I can just get through one person, then it helps heal me as well. So thank you, everybody. All right. Good night.